Have you ever had that feeling, that quiet, kind of unsettling doubt? You've climbed the ranks, you've got the title, maybe even the respect of your whole industry, but in a quiet moment, the question just hangs there.
Who am I, really?
Exactly. And why does all this effort even matter?
That feeling, it's so much more than just a passing insecurity.
Right.
Our sources call it the quiet crisis. It's this subtle, almost invisible misalignment that can just quietly erode the foundation of even the most successful leader.
It's like realizing you built your house on shifting sand.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And that is exactly our mission today. We're doing a deep dive into what is really a strategic imperative for any kind of enduring influence.
Because in a world that is obsessed with external recognition, measurable success.
Yeah, the metrics.
The metrics, so many of us anchor our sense of worth in those things, and they're temporary, they're external. And the leadership that comes from that, it's reactive, it's fragile.
Totally dependent on the next win.
To fight that fragility, we are unpacking what our sources call the leadership alignment formula. It's a sequence.
Okay.
Identity leads to purpose, which leads to integrity, and that creates impact. Everything, and I mean everything, hinges on that first piece.
Humanity.
If that identity is unstable, the whole thing, purpose, integrity, impact, it's all compromised.
All right, let's just jump right into that foundational flaw, because this feels like where the crisis actually begins.
It is.
Our sources, they really emphasize that leadership failures hardly ever start with a public mistake.
No.
Or a bad quarterly report. They start invisibly, inside, with a confused or unsettled sense of who you are. The external failure is just the symptom showing up late.
Precisely. I mean, a leader might look completely competent, productive even. They're hitting their targets, they're charismatic.
They check all the boxes.
But internally, their decisions are being driven by anxiety, by the need for approval, by this relentless pressure to just keep up appearances. And when decisions flow from fear or comparison,
They don't have real conviction.
none. And that erodes trust. It starts with the leader's own trust in themselves.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me, because the sources contrast two completely different ways of defining ourselves. You've got the modern cultural view, which sort of treats identity as a personal project. Look inward, discover yourself.
Find your truth.
Right, define yourself by what you achieve or what you want. It's all self-authored.
And the biblical vision offers this. Just radical counter-narrative. It says identity isn't self-authored, it's bestowed, it's received.
So it's not something you build, it's something you're given.
Exactly. It's defined by relationship long before it's defined by any assignment. The most powerful anchor for this is right there in Genesis 1. Humanity is first declared the image bearer of God.
So an identity rooted in relationship, in worth.
In intrinsic worth, before they ever get the assignment to go tend the garden, identity precedes assignment.
Being precedes doing. But how do you translate image bearer into language that helps someone who's dealing with, performance reviews and profit and loss statements?
But that's the translation that sets you free. An image bearer identity means your intrinsic worth is established. Full stop.
It's a given.
It's a given. It's independent of your output, your job title, your bank account. If you understand that, you lead from confidence. If you define yourself by extrinsic achievement, you lead from scarcity.
And the fear of losing everything you built.
That's a constant anxiety.
And this pattern, this affirmation coming before the activity, it's consistent throughout the sources.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about the two most pivotal examples. Look at Jesus at his baptism.
Right.
Before a single sermon is preached, before one miracle is performed, the Father affirms him, "You are my Son whom I love. With you I am well pleased."
That affirmation is foundational.
Foundational. He didn't have to strive for acceptance. He led from a secure, settled acceptance.
And we see the same thing with Jeremiah, right? The reluctant prophet.
Just as clearly. God says to him, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you. Before you were born I set you apart." The knowing, the setting apart, the identity, it happens long before the assignment is even on the table.
It creates certainty.
It's supposed to. If you rush into the activity, the prophet role, the CEO role, without anchoring that identity first, you find yourself just frantically striving for an affirmation that was always meant to be a gift.
Not something you earn through endless work.
And that striving, that leads us straight into the traps.
Which brings us to the core issue for anyone listening. The three most seductive false identities that just undermine everything. These are the deep internal traps leaders fall into.
When they haven't settled that first layer of identity, the first one is the performance identity.
This one feels like the most culturally accepted one.
Oh, it's celebrated. It's where your sense of worth becomes completely entangled with your output, with results, with metrics. The core belief is, I am what I produce.
And that makes leadership incredibly anxious, brittle.
Brittle's a great word. Failure is devastating. Because it's not just a failed project, it feels like a total rejection of yourself.
And rest becomes guilt.
You feel guilty for resting.
Yeah.
The sources bring up that famous contrast between Martha and Mary. Martha is frantic service. Her identity is tied up in her output.
And Mary's is attentive presence.
The modern parallel is so stark. Martha is the CEO who cannot take a vacation without checking email every 30 minutes. Because if she stops...
She ceases to exist in her own mind.
Exactly. You are one bad quarter, one physical breakdown away from a total identity collapse. It leads to burnout or, frankly, to compromising your ethics to keep the numbers up.
Wow. Okay, then there's the second one, the approval identity.
Or leading for applause.
This leader is just hypersensitive to what people think, driven by a fear of disappointing others, of losing influence.
Whether that's the public, the board, or just their immediate team, the fear of people becomes what the sources call a functional god.
So instead of checking in with their core purpose, they're checking the polls.
Or the focus groups, or the office gossip. Their decisions are shaped more by public opinion than by their own core values.
And if you're leading from that place, you're just constantly vulnerable.
To manipulation,
Akita.
constantly. We see a really sobering example in King Saul. After a major failure, his justification over and over was,
I was afraid of the people.
I was afraid of the people. He chose short-term public approval over his actual mission. And that is so alive today. This is the executive who shifts policy based on the loudest voices on social media.
Or avoids a necessary hard conversation with a team member because they just can't stand the conflict.
Exactly. A secure leader can take feedback without being controlled by it. An insecure leader is either manipulating people or being manipulated by them. There's no middle ground.
And the third one, the positional identity.
This is confusing your title with your calling.
Ah.
A position is supposed to be a tool, a platform for stewardship. But when it becomes your identity, leadership gets defensive.
Because the title is no longer a means to serve something.
It becomes an end in itself. It has to be protected.
So this is where you see leaders who hoard authority, who resist any kind of succession planning.
Yes, they treat their role like a possession to be protected at all costs. Their worth comes from the status, not from the service.
Jesus speaks directly to this, doesn't he?
He does. He tells his disciples, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them. Not so with you. Kingdom leadership flows from servanthood.
Precisely because your identity is secure apart from your status.
And if your identity is your title, insecurity is it's inevitable. Because if the role is removed, you retire, you get fired, your sense of self is just gone, lost.
So if those three false identities break us into pieces, how does a settled received identity bring us back to wholeness, to the next step in the formula, integrity?
That's the critical bridge. See, integrity biblically isn't just about moral compliance, not cheating on your taxes.
Right, it's more than a checklist.
It means wholeness, an undivided, seamless life. It's when your inner conviction and your outer action are coherent. And if your identity is settled, that coherence is possible.
But if your identity is fragmented between performance, approval, position...
Coherence is impossible. You can just picture it, right? If your identity is a fixed point, your actions can align with it. If your identity is bouncing between those three false gods, your actions will bounce all over the place,
creating a chaotic, untrustworthy leader.
And we see a beautiful example of this coherence in Genesis with Joseph. He resists this extreme temptation, and it's not through sheer willpower alone, it's through identity clarity.
What does he say?
He declares, how then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? His refusal just flows from a settled relationship, a clear sense of who he was. The question wasn't, can I get away with this?
It was, is this aligned with who I am?
Exactly.
So if a performance identity is kind of the opposite of this, how does a secured identity prevent burnout? I mean, isn't efficiency often confused with purpose in high-achieving worlds?
That is a vital distinction. Efficiency is about speed. Purpose is about direction and meaning.
Okay.
And here's the cost of misalignment. When doing outruns being, your activity becomes a substitute for actual intimacy or meaning. Burnout is almost always the result of trying to sustain externally what hasn't been settled internally.
You're running a deficit in your soul.
A huge one. A leadership that ignores the inner life might expand on the outside, bigger company, bigger title, but it hollows out on the inside.
So grounding ourselves in this truth,
Mm.
what does a settled identity actually produce in a leader? What does it look like?
Two things immediately. Resilience and authority.
Okay.
Resilience is, look at the Apostle Paul. Enduring rejection, shipwreck, prison. Why? In his words, I know whom I have believed. His identity was anchored in God, and that provides emotional stability when everything externally is unstable.
The waves are high, but the anchor holds?
The anchor holds. And then authority, and I don't mean coercive authority.
You're not power over, but...
Credible authority. It emerges when your inner identity and your outward actions converge. Influence just flows naturally from that integrity because people can sense the coherence. They trust you because they sense you're trustworthy, not just trying to prove something.
And that internal cohesion, it transforms leadership from that reactive survival mode.
Yes, constantly putting out fires.
To proactive stewardship. You're managing the roles you were given, not desperately clinging to them.
That's the key.
So let's get practical. This kind of identity isn't sustained by accident. If someone listening recognizes themselves in one of those three traps, what practices do our sources point to?
Well, they stress that identity is maintained through intentional disciplines, formation practices. This isn't just about reading more, it's about engaging in activities that actively remind you of who you are.
Like what?
This includes a regular commitment to scripture, to prayer, and to community. And community is so important because it acts as both a mirror reflecting your true self back to you and a guardrail,
Pulling you back from the ditches.
pulling you back from the ditches of performance or approval.
I really like how the sources reframe rest, too. Sabbath and rest are vital, but not as a reward for good performance.
No, not a day you earn.
Right, it's an active declaration of trust. When you truly rest, you're declaring that the world will not fall apart without your output, and therefore your worth isn't tied to your busyness.
Exactly. It breaks the performance identity cycle. And another crucial practical exercise is the power of regular declaration.
Declaration.
It's simple, but it's hard because it takes intention. It means starting the day not with the task list, but with remembrance, affirming truths rooted in Scripture.
So what would that sound like, practically, before you even face your team or your inbox?
Instead of asking, what must I do today to prove I'm valuable, you shift the question. You ask, what good works has my Creator already prepared for me to step into? You're moving from seeking acceptance to operating from assurance.
That's a huge shift.
It is. Affirming things like, we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. Or, you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood. It grounds your focus in received status, not required effort.
Moving from chasing acceptance to leading from assurance. Okay, and finally you mentioned an identity mapping tool. What does that look like?
It's a reflective process, simple but deep. It's about integrating 4 areas: your God-given strengths, your spiritual gifts, your current roles, and your divine purpose. The goal is to see where they all intersect.
And how does that help filter decisions?
The map acts as a filter. When a new opportunity comes up, you ask, does this align my core spiritual gift with my current role in a way that serves my divine purpose?
So it might be a good opportunity, but it's just not yours.
Exactly. And that clarity, it just dramatically reduces reactive decision-making.
Right.
You know what's aligned with who you are. That is proactive stewardship in action.
So what does this all mean for that high-achieving leader listening right now, sitting in their office, maybe feeling that internal hollowness?
It means you face a central defining choice. Are you going to keep leading from shifting expectations and external validation, that frantic, tiring pursuit of titles and approval, or are you going to root your life in a solid, received understanding of your God-given identity?
Because true freedom comes from leading from an identity that's received, not one you have to fight to create and prove every single morning.
That struggle is what drains us. The world urges you to constantly prove, promote, and protect yourself, your status. It is exhausting, and at the end of the day, it's futile.
So what's the invitation?
The invitation is quieter, it's stronger, it's this. You do not have to create who you are. You are already God's workmanship, defined, known, and purposed. The work is simply to align your outward life with that settled inner truth.
Leadership that lasts, then.
Yeah.
Leadership that really bends the arc of influence. It's not driven by the anxious need to prove your worth.
Never. It's driven by the profound freedom of already belonging. That is where lasting, purposeful impact, the kind that sustains you through failure and success, that's where it begins. And so here's the thought we want to leave you with. Consider the weight you are carrying right now, trying to keep all those plates spinning. The performance plate, the approval plate, the position plate. What is one single strategic decision you can make this week? What task could you intentionally refuse to do that would declare in the cleanest terms possible that your worth is already settled? Because that refusal, that is where your true resilient leadership begins.